this is Angela Moss Poole, and you're watching the collab with Sherwin and Patrice on Indigo Inspire Live.
And great Wednesday evening to everyone. It's Patrice right here on the Indigo Inspire Live YouTube channel. And shout out to those of you who've been watching the replays. I'm seeing the numbers definitely uptick because you are locking into the financial information that we are providing. For the one and only David Awakim from Tri-State Financial Advisors, who is with us again today. This is part 3. Can you believe, David, we are on part 3?
Mind shocking.
Yeah, we are on part 3. And so we are so thankful for those of you who are going to be watching live and for the replay. Definitely appreciate the fact that you are taking the clips and you're sharing them. And it is so important that we get this information out. That's why we're here. That's why David is here, to provide you with all the information you need for a incredible financial health care plan, and not just health care for your physical health, but also a healthy health care plan for anything in the future, for retirement, for investing and things of that nature. So we are expanding the definition of healthcare here on the Indigo Inspire Live podcast here. So I want to once again introduce you to David Awakim again, and he will be our guest presenter once more for part 3 of this series.
Pleasure is always, Patrice. Thank you for having me on.
Yes.
Always love to educate more people and get their finances in good shape and health. I always like to say that a healthy wallet makes a healthy mind.
For
Right?
sure. For sure.
The stress that can ease up just from a low proactive planning and a few changes today,
Hmm.
baffling impact that it can make is just something that's too worthwhile to not discuss.
For sure. For sure.
And
For
for
sure.
those that are, watching the replay in the future, can't make it live, feel free to use the QR code on the screen, help me with any questions you might have. And if you're watching live, the chat is all for you. I'll be keeping an eye on it and adjusting as we go along. So please feel free to type in, always have to address your concerns, make sure that everything's being conveyed properly, accurately, and clearly.
Okay. I'm just having you're a little muffled on your sound today your mic. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, let me try bringing it closer. Usually fixes it. Is this better? Test
Yeah,
1,
much
2,
better.
3.
Yes.
1, 2.
Yeah, much better. Yes.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Perfect. But just as I was saying, if you have any questions, right, if you're watching it live, the chat is all yours. Please ask as much as you want. Always happy to address them and help people process the information live. I always think that's very helpful to have a back and forth.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you're watching the replays, you can scan the QR code on screen. You can send me an email. You can even give me a phone call or text right there. I'll be sure to address your questions, help you with whatever thoughts you're working with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, David, we're going to turn the
Thank you.
presentation over to you.
Appreciate it. I think we're going to start with just a little bit of an overview of what we discussed previously, right? Especially when it comes to healthcare planning, what opportunities and services exist in that world, and then that 3 bucket strategy. That was a big emphasis of our previous conversation. So jumping right into that, excuse me here. There's my mouse. I lost it for a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But jumping straight into it, in our first conversation, we focused a lot on the healthcare side of things, particularly when it comes to Medicare right? What is it? It's for folks mostly that are over 65, and it's government health insurance. Because when you're retired, you're no longer working, so your employer is no longer providing you with health insurance benefits.
Hmm.
But you still need your health care. Typically, you need most of your health care once you're in retirement age. That's where Medicare comes in. We discuss some options around it from traditional to Medicare Advantage, some of the pros and the cons associated with them. We talked about things like Medigap, which help fill in any holes in your Medicare plan, either traditional or Advantage, eligibility and opportunities there. We also compared Medicare to Medicaid, which is, again, Medicare, care for the elderly, Medicaid, aiding the less fortunate. That's the program for people that are disabilities or lower income to help them support themselves and maintain productive status in society and just really help them take care of themselves and their loved ones. We also talked about Social Security benefits and then compared them to supplemental security income. Who gets what? How much can you expect? What are the conditions and the gotchas associated with them? And for a more in-depth look, please feel free to go to our previous conversations. There's a lot more detail there when it
For
comes to
sure.
these areas.
And I would encourage those, please make sure start if you feel like you're coming in the middle of a conversation, which when you get to part three, please just go back a couple of series back, beginning with part one, and you'll be all caught up with some vital information there. Because when I go back, it's something new that I realize, oh, okay, I missed something, but I got it on the replay. So that's great.
Yeah. Even I learn something new every day. Right? I think it's very critical to always review this information and it helps to digest it, to just see as much as possible.
For sure.
And in our second conversation, part two, we discuss this three bucket approach. The core idea here is that as you progress in your life towards retirement, and then once you get into and through retirement, there's typically five major obstacles that people will encounter. You can see those on the top right-hand side here. These are things like inflation. You know, back in the 1950s, $100 could buy you everything you could ever dream of. Could buy a house for like $5,000.
Wow.
What a dream, right?
Wow.
Uh, Someone pinch me. I gotta stay awake.
Mm.
But nowadays, that's just no longer the case. As the economy grows, it takes more to purchase the same. That's inflation. It's often inevitable. And that's one of the biggest risks that people face as they save their money. Just being outpaced by inflation and losing purchasing power. Other risks are things like the market taking a downturn at the wrong time, not having access to your money because it's locked up in something illiquid like your real estate or some kind of investment vehicle with constraints. Emergency risk, just having all your money invested and then something unfortunate happens, right? The car breaks down, you get an injury, you got to go to the hospital, you got bills to pay, but your investments aren't where you'd like them to be. You can't give them the time they need to recover. And then, of course, longevity risk, fancy words for running out of money. I know too many people who just can't sleep well at night, even when they're all set up, because they have that fear, that ticking thought in their head of, what if I live too long for what I worked so hard to save?
Mm. That's a
Right?
that
It's an
that
extreme of
that's
fear
a
that's
that's a
almost kind of
that's a
one that I
very
encounter.
yeah that's a very um that's a real question because there are a lot of
Yeah.
people who they've worked all their lives and how many times you or and I've heard stories of people that have worked 30-40 years
Hmm.
and like in a couple of months they've passed away. So it's
Right.
yeah, so you're wondering, will
It's a
I
balancing act.
that's a strange
Right.
balancing act.
It's
But
always a question of, do I work one more year,
hmm
right?
hmm
And
hmm
it's a trade-off, right? Usually the trade-off is, hey, how much money do you have versus how much time do you want to achieve the things you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're never promised tomorrow. But
Correct.
one thing we can do is just get hard numbers in place of, hey, if I want to live like this in retirement, what's the dollar figure I need to make that sustainable?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That way, once you hit that dollar figure, you know that every dollar over that is something we like to call targeted growth, right? That's the goal achievement bucket.
Yeah.
So, hey, I want to live like this in retirement, but I also
Mhm.
want to buy a Ferrari. I want to buy a yacht. I want to go on a Disney World cruise every other year. This is the extra money that can go towards those other goals. It can also be things like estate planning, like leaving a legacy behind for,
Yeah.
an alma mater that you're very proud of, or some kids or grandkids you're trying to look after. All those things, any goals you're working towards in retirement, go in targeted growth.
Mm-hmm.
The income is what we often solve for, that income gap, which is what's the least amount of dollars we need to have saved up to sustainably replicate our income in retirement. Those two buckets are going to be the highlight of our conversation today. Just what options exist within them and how we go about accessing and utilizing that.
Okay.
I'm going to get us started with the targeted growth bucket because most people are already using something in this that they're not often, too often, unaware of all the details and how it actually works under the hood. And that's the 401k plan. Most people employed in America contribute to a 401k plan or something similar, like a thrift savings plan if they're in the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
or a 457b, 401a, any of those fun tax code names, HR 10s. End of the day, retirement accounts, contribution based retirement accounts, work pretty similarly. You put in money, after your employer has a little bit of match on that money, and that gets invested in the markets. For most Americans, their 401k plan is the majority of their net worth,
Mm.
well over 90%. And often within those 401k plans, most people never make any changes and get placed into a default option. They have different brand names like a Fidelity Freedom Fund, Lifetime Retirement Fund, Life Cycle Fund. But at the end of the day, they all target a certain year to retire. This example I have on screen is something targeting the year 2040. Doing some quick math, if the expected retirement age is 65, and this is saying they're going to retire by 2040, this is someone that's about 50 years old today.
I'm going to make that graph a little bigger so so people can really
Yeah,
take a look at the pie here and these numbers.
yeah, please
Yeah.
do.
Yes, go ahead. There you are.
Yeah, and I'll walk through everything you see on the screen here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On this left-hand side, you can see the asset allocation. All fancy words for, hey, what's our money actually invested into? You can see it's a mix of cash, US stocks, so US companies, international stocks, companies with headquarters outside the US, and then bonds. Bonds are just you're giving out a loan to someone. And we like to think of these as two sides of one pie. The stocks make up the aggressive side. These are dollars that are meant to grow long term,
Mm-hmm.
but in the short term may take on losses. Right? A company might have a bad quarter, a bad week, whatever it might be, but they often rebound. And if they have a good fundamental business model, will just grow and grow and grow as our society grows and develops over time. So these are for long-term growth. Meanwhile, the cash and the bonds make up your conservative side of the pie. This is for dollars that are meant to be safer. They're meant to be steady when the
Mm-hmm.
market crashes, but they're invested, meaning that they still give you a little bit of return. Oftentimes, the goal here is to outpace inflation. Back to those, $5,000 from 1950.
Yeah.
If your great great grandpa stuffed it under a mattress, it's just not worth too much today.
Mm-mm.
Versus putting in something returning 3 to 4% each year, over that much time, even those low numbers make big impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, could buy today what $5,000 could buy back in 1950.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then on the bottom left, I just have a more detailed analysis on what kind of stocks in particular.
Okay.
Right, I'm not going to dive too deep into the weeds on what's different kind of companies or different sizes of companies. You can think of it as large cap companies being the biggest companies, right? Those that are all over the United States. Small cap companies are companies that are local to one area. Think of like your In-N-Out chain in
Mm.
California, right? Big fan myself. First
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And mid cap is something in between, right? Might be covers the whole U.S. but a little bit smaller, or might just be something that is restricted to one region but pretty important in that region.
Mm-hmm.
On the bottom, we have three different kinds of companies. Growth companies are companies that reinvest into themselves, right? Think of your Netflix, Facebook, Google, Nvidia. They're always coming out with a new product, a new thing, trying to get a bigger market share and expand their business. The goal of growth companies is, like the name might tell you,
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of things, you have companies that are more focused on maintaining what they've already gotten. These are your value companies. I also like to call them your kitchen sink companies, right? Think of Clorox, think of the tissues you buy, think of the food and the clothes that you wear, right? Walmart and McDonald's are now opening up 1,000 new stores each year. They've done their growth.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they take their profits and give it back to their investors as dividends. And we'll get into the distinction between how those tend to fare in different market scenarios later on in our conversation as well. If not this one, then definitely a future webinar.
Okay.
And then blend is a mix of the two, right? Amazon gives some dividends nowadays, but is also heavily focused on growing and expanding its business share. And that wraps it up for the left-hand side of things, which is how our dollars are parked. On the right-hand side, that I want to focus on is how those dollars parked have actually performed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Patrice, just give me a guess here. How many Americans do you think are about 50 years old today?
Oh, wow.
Big number, right?
Yes, it's a big number. It's a big number because that would be the group that's the tail end of the baby boomer movement.
Right? Tens and tens of millions of
Millions of
people.
people.
Is that fair?
Absolutely.
And for a majority of them, probably 70 to 80%, their retirement, their biggest asset is invested into this specific target retirement fund or one that looks very similar to it.
Mm-hmm.
And what this graph on the right-hand side here is showing is how their investments have performed in this orange line. The target date retirement fund 2040 versus the S&P 500, our benchmark in the blue line. You're going to hear those words S&P 500 a lot in our conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's the general benchmark used by the financial services industry. It's the 500 biggest companies in America.
I want to go back to something you just said, though. I really don't
Yeah,
want that to slide by, which is when you're talking about the fact that you have tens of millions of 50 plus citizens,
yeah, 50,
and
usually 48 to 52,
yeah,
that range.
and so you have this large population within that age demographic, and the bulk, 80+% of their, I guess, worth, or we want to call
Yeah,
it that, is through their retirement plan, as
right?
opposed
It's how
to
most people save.
yeah. And I was just going to say, because what I noticed just from your introduction about the cost of housing back in the 1950s and that kind of thing, $5,000, and what you could get for $100 in purchase power and everything. Um, where did we lose the shift of the concept of savings at this
Hmm.
point? Because are we thinking we're post war? Um, Everything was about making sure not just rationing. I wasn't there, but just for history. Uh, but the savings
Okay.
component of it, and um, getting more for your money. And then we have this industrial revolution that kind of picks up
Hmm.
more, and people are now being able to purchase homes in the suburbs with a little more land and so on and so forth. But why that lack of still taking that principle of saving? Because how many stories have you possibly
Hmm.
heard where your grandmother or great grandmother, you thought they didn't have anything until when they passed away you found out they had all this money left, whatever. So why is it that we have not as a society really impressed upon the necessity for saving
Yeah, that
so that
that
we
that is
so
a
that we
great
wouldn't.
question. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so no, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think I can give you a definitive answer, right? I think this is a question that historians are going to mull over
Hmm.
for decades and decades to come. I can reference what I do know, though, which, although limited, I think it'd be around the same time that we lost things like home econ, right? There used to be a common course about, just, hey, let's teach kids basic life skills.
Hmm.
And then it kind of just got squeezed out of the curriculum to the extent of my knowledge. Again, this is not my area of expertise. I want to just preface with that.
Hmm.
But, it's just never that important to teach our kids about finances nowadays. It's one of those things that you're thrust into adulthood. Like, I saw statistics recently, 2022 survey, I want to say, 1 out of 4 20-year-olds cannot cook. Like, you gave them a full fridge, a fully prepped kitchen,
Hmm.
and told them to fend for themselves. Can't even make an omelet.
Hmm.
1 out of 4,
Wow.
right? It's just, there's a lot of necessary skills that I feel we've taken for granted for so long
Mhm.
that haven't necessarily been passed on. Because it takes time and space to pass those things on. But as third spaces and free time have kind of dwindled over the decades,
Mhm.
where everything has become so much more structured and dedicated, kind of lost that like hapstance survival instinct. And that's the one side of thing. I think that's the more, abstract philosophical side of things.
Mhm.
The other side to my answer, I would say about 1971. So we saw a lot of major shifts in the economy. There's a website you can look up. I'm not going to put the link in the chat, but
Mhm.
if you look up, what went wrong in 1971, you'll see a website that has about 50 different charts showing different trends in the economy that started at about that same time. And one of the biggest trends is just this gap between real production and income compensation.
Mm. Mm. Mhm. Okay.
Right? Income has kind of flatlined
Mhm.
when inflation adjusted ever since that time, even though the economy has kept growing and producing more and more. So I think it's a combination of saving was never prioritized, it was just a habit that slowly dwindled away,
Mhm.
as well as when there's less to go around, it takes more dedication to choose to save versus use something else.
Mm. Mm.
That's where
Yeah.
my mind is going. But again, I'm
No, I
sure
think
historians
no.
will have many answers over the decades.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think you probably definitely hit on the that shift in the economy. So, people are not getting raises, or the cost of living, hourly wage is not matching, as you
Mhm.
say, the
Yeah, like used to be able to support a family with a single income, right?
yes, yes.
But support a family, buy a house, have 2 cars, family of 4 kids, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
with one single income.
Yeah.
I- if you're doing that nowadays, please tell me what you do. I want to join you,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
Wages just don't support as much as they used to back in the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that we'll definitely have to revisit that conversation at some point
Yeah,
about the trajectory of the lack of savings in comparison to the dependency of let me get to the retirement part so that I can X, Y, and Z. Yes.
right. Have time to do my goals.
Yes.
Let me put on my economist hat there.
Mm-hmm.
But diving back to how it's actually performed when it comes to people's retirements over the last decade or so, this is from end of last quarter, Q1, excuse me, from 2016 down to 2026. The orange line is that target date fund, the default option that people are placed into. Blue line is the overall market.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the bottom, we have some trailing returns. So these are annualized averages over the last year, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years for the target date fund as well as the market. Yeah, what went wrong in 1971?
Mm-hmm. What went wrong in 1971? Okay, got you.
Yeah, that's the year we saw a lot of these trends start happening.
Mm-hmm.
And after portfolio returns, we can see some modern portfolio theory statistics. These are some risk and reward uh, metrics that we like to look at. Not going to dive too deep into them for our conversation. I'm going to try to keep it mostly surface level.
Mm-hmm.
But just taking a look at all that's at the screen, what's jumping out to you, Patrice?
We have a little bit of a downward on the S&P that I'm noticing.
Yeah, the first quarter of the year was definitely a down period. It went down about 5%.
Mm-hmm.
But if I just check right now, just typing S&P 500 into Google, year to date, we're up about 10%.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that goes back to that, emergency risk I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Markets tend to go up over time. In fact, the stock market has been the only thing that has outpaced inflation over the long term, other than like owning a business.
So let me ask this, and I don't know if you really want to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Mhm.
Are we heading for a bubble?
I have no clue, right? It's not my job to have a crystal ball, tell you when a bubble is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I like to look at some metrics like, company earnings, debt to liquidity ratio, and those have looked good recently despite all that's been happening.
Mm-hmm.
And even back in the day during the dot-com bubble, people predicted that bubble for years before it happened. And there were still major opportunities for growth coming up to that. We always like to say it's not about time timing the market, it's about time in the markets. I'm actually gonna pull up a screen for us here.
Okay.
Just give me a moment. Showing the S&P 500 over a long time horizon to really highlight that point for everyone watching at home. And this is something you can just, use Google, find it on your own, take a look at. And let me change my screen here. Give me one moment.
Okay.
Stop and share.
All right. We'll bring it
So I
back
have
on.
the S&P 500
Here
going
we go.
back to 1997.
Mm-hmm.
Right, this is when the dot-com bubble happened.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it drops back to where it was five
Mm-hmm.
years ago. But compare the dot-com bubble to all the way to today, almost 1,000% increase.
Mm.
And if I go back further, just S&P 500 over the last 100 years, I think you're gonna like what you're about to see.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of major drops, what the y-axis is telling us here is that if you put $10 in the S&P 500 back in 19, let's see here, 1933,
Yeah.
today, those same $10 will be worth about $7,500 90 years later.
And that's one, let's just say one $10 bill.
Exactly. If you
Okay.
had,
Multiplied by,
if you
okay.
had 10,000 of those,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have
Mm-hmm.
10,000 times
Mm-hmm.
7,000, $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
$70,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see again the bubbles that happen. Like bubbles are inevitable, market corrections are inevitable. That is a part of life. That's why we like to structure our portfolios to be able to stay smart and stay invested through those storms that happen. Right. For example, I'm going to highlight the housing crash back in '08. You can see a pretty significant drop,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you get scared and you cash out your dollars here, you'll never get to enjoy the peaks that come afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's why investing is all about long term, right? The longer your time horizon, the more you can afford to wait out these storms and enjoy the returns of your money.
That's very
Does that kind of
encouraging.
answer your question?
Oh, your screen. Oh,
Oh,
for some reason, your screen left. Not
I was
sure.
just switching to the other one.
Okay, gotcha.
Apologies there. Should I give you a heads up?
Okay. Okay. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
But yeah, I hope that answers your question, right? I can't
It
tell you
did.
when the bubble's going to happen. I
Mm-hmm.
know that corrections are coming. There's always a next correction.
Mm-hmm.
There's also growth that comes afterwards.
And it's the patience to wait it out and let it do what it's going to do.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
not only the capacity to wait it out, right? You have funds that are going to help you survive. You have your salary that's going to keep you going. You have your income in retirement,
Mhm.
but also the behavioral, right? Knowing that time in the market is more important than timing the markets. Knowing that historically
Mhm.
markets go up. They're going to have times where they go up and down, but over long time horizons, they've been the only thing that's kept pace with inflation, or sorry,
Mhm.
outpaced inflation. Excuse me.
Yeah. Are we at an outpaced rate of inflation right now?
Yeah, so inflation has been taken at about 3.5% over the last 10 years. So each year, on average, everything you spend altogether costs about 3.5% more.
Mm.
I know, it hurts. But meanwhile, markets over that same time period have done 15%, give or take.
Yeah, but for those that are actively involved in um, that level of
So this is
investment.
the benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these things called index traded funds. That's where they don't actively make day-to-day changes. All that they do is you put your money into one of these ETFs, these index traded funds,
Mm-hmm.
exchange traded funds, also called index funds, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And they just try to track an index. The index we're talking about is something like the S&P 500,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's, hey, just hand me a list of the 500 biggest companies in the US and give me a little piece of each one. I'm not going to try to pick which one's the best one, try to pick the winners, avoid the losers. Just give me the full list. I'll be in the full market, join the whole tide, get a little part of each boat on the tide,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is not active, this is very passive.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear. And the market overall has outpaced inflation over the last 10 years, and consistently it's been the only thing to do that over a long time. But I want to highlight that really sticks out to me is that compared to the overall marketplace, this 2040 target retirement fund has only done about 10%. What that means is that, for a 50-year-old, they're getting about 10%, markets are doing about 14, they're missing out on 3% each year for the last 10 years. Over the last 5, they're doing 8, market does 12, they lose out on 4. Last 3, they're doing 14, market does 18, they lose out on 4. It's done well over their most recent year, 19, benchmark's now 17, they won on 2. But over the long time horizon, that average of 3%, 4% missed. So it causes the gap you see on the graph,
Mm-hmm.
right? What this graph is showing is that if someone had 35,000 and they put it in the markets on March 2016, if they put it all into this target retirement fund, which is a default option that most Americans get placed without even knowing what they're placed into,
Mm-hmm.
they'd have about $105,000 after 10 years. Not bad. Tripling your money over 10 years is a pretty
Yeah.
great outcome. But when you look at the other opportunities that were on the table for them, the S&P 500, meanwhile, is about 135,000. So instead of tripling your money, would have quadrupled. And of course, this is
Mm.
historic data, but it just goes to show that most people aren't aware of what's in their portfolio,
Yeah.
nor the anchors that are holding them back
Mm.
from getting that risk-adjusted reward. And I know we said we're not going to get into it, but just know that that's what the alpha figure measures down here.
Right here, so
Right, so
that
for
free portfolio um, minus 0.04. Yep, there we
mhm,
go. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So what that's saying is that on a risk-adjusted basis, so for how much volatility you're taking, how much up and down you're taking,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing out on 0.4%. You're underperforming
Mm-hmm.
by by 2.09%. You're
Mm-hmm.
underperforming by 1.22%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really jumps out to me because you're not getting properly rewarded for your
Yeah.
taking on in those portfolios.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two major areas of opportunity when it comes to fixing that. There's one on the aggressive side of the pie, that's the stocks, and one on the conservative side of the pie. Before we jump into those opportunities, what questions do you have around this example target date fund, the 2040 fund?
I think it was more so when you're in this area of like looking at the investing and the different things that can take place to shifts. Um, I would, I think these conversations I've had with you, I would say I'd probably go more aggressive.
Yeah, a lot of people, we'll talk about risk tolerance later on, have a slide
Hmm.
prepared for that.
Hmm.
And if they, it's a personal decision,
Yeah.
right? It's about how much risk can you afford to take on? Meaning that, hey, if you got $3,000 in your checking account, you can't take on too much risk, right? You got expenses you got to pay, emergencies that come up. You can't afford to have your money go down during a market correction. The other thing is that behavioral side of things again. If you see your account go down 30%, are you going to panic sell? Even though you know you shouldn't, most people that panic sell also know they shouldn't, but they still do it. So just being honest with yourself about, hey, how much of a drop am I willing to see?
Um, yeah, I'll process that one
Mhm.
privately. Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a personal decision end of the
Hmm.
day,
Hmm.
right? And we'll go over what historically has been best performing,
Hmm.
what kind of risk level takes that on.
Yeah.
I'm also going to preface by saying that these default options often take on a lot more risk than advertised. That's what the beta figure measures for us.
Hmm.
This 2040 fund is about an 8 out of 10.
That's really good.
What that means is that if the market goes up 10%, you expect it to go up 8%.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, if the market goes down 10%, you also expect to go down 8%, right? You're getting 80% of the 10.
Hmm.
What the alpha figure tells us is that, hey, markets go up 10, you expect 8, but you only get 7. That's the big no-no. That's what concerns us. It means we're taking on a lot more risk that we're getting rewarded for.
Hmm. Wow.
Uh, And there's two big anchors that we see holding back portfolios. One on the aggressive side and one on the aggressive side,
Mm-hmm.
one on the conservative side. Conservative being the cash and the bonds, aggressive being the international and the US stocks. Before I jump into that, I feel like you had a question you were going to say.
No, 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 no. I was just listening to your explanation of where we are with the MPT statistics right here, and we're the 8 to 10. That's where it's like,
Hmm. Give some
Yeah.
food for thought.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, again, most Americans haven't really looked under the hood of their 401k plan and aren't aware of all these things that are going on within their retirement and, frankly, their biggest investment most of the time.
Hmm.
And now I want to jump into those opportunities that we often see. First, I want to talk about the fixed side of the portfolio. So I have those bonds pulled out separately, and you can see their performance here on the orange line
Hmm.
compared to the same market. What you'll notice that I want to draw your eyes to is that over the last 5 years, they've been practically flat and having kept pace with inflation over the last 10. Just as a reminder, inflation's been ticking at about 3.5%. Now, why do you think that these fund managers that design these default options might have placed most people into these underperforming bonds here?
Um, I'm going to throw something out there that comes to the top of my head. Actually, I'm just going to say
What'd you say? I couldn't hear you.
profits, profits.
No, no, I wouldn't say so, right? If these funds grow bigger, then the fund managers that get a percentage of the fund would
Hmm.
get more money, right? A big part of it, it turns out, is just history. These target date funds were designed back in the 1950s when model portfolio theory was first formed.
Mm.
And back then, it worked great. Back in those days, bonds were very safe and conservative and were able to still net you 17, 19% a year, right? So giving you equity-like returns while being very, very safe. But back in those days, we also had interest rates that were closer to 20%.
Did you say 20%?
20%, yes.
In what year?
1950s, 60s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very different environment than the one that we live in today. A lot of these funds were designed back then, and when a fund is designed, it makes a prospectus. That's a declaration of what it's going to focus on and what its strategy is. And because of all the regulation that's come out around these target retirement funds, their prospectuses limit them to a combination of bonds, international stock, US stock, and cash. So within those limitations working on from 1950s and the limited manpower available, right? These target date funds aren't sitting down with each of those tens of millions of Americans having a conversation on what specifically you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a financial advisor does for someone, right? Individual conversations, individual portfolios. But instead, they just lump them into these default options, which often underperform, right? They do better than nothing, but they're not giving you your money's worth at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day.
I want to take a look at that. Let's go back to this point
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
where it's, yeah, this portfolio return gross.
And the point I want to highlight is just that, while this fund is doing 1.5%,
Mm-hmm.
things are getting 3.5% more expensive. So just quick math, things are getting more expensive 2% faster
Mm-hmm.
than your money's growing. So you're losing 2% of your purchasing power each year,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
right? Even without compounding over 10 years, if you could buy, 5 Big Macs with $100 bill, you can only buy 4. With compounding, that's more like 3 or 2. Imagine your same bill buying you half as much food, half as many groceries, half as much gas at the pump.
Well, this is what people are seeing now, David, where they are, where we're all feeling it when you go to put
Right?
gas in your car. Take me
Yeah,
back
the
to
$100 gas
2020.
bill.
All right, hey, listen, take me back to 2025 because at least, and I'm talking about just 6 months ago,
Right?
where the gas prices. So it's definitely an immediate impact in certain areas.
Right. People feel it at the bottom line at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Right? It's something you see at the gas pump at the grocery store, which is why these averages can be a little bit deceiving, right?
Hmm.
3.5% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you see it at the store, you feel it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's why people like to have 2 goals for the conservative side of the portfolio. The first goal is something that doesn't lose money, right? So when the market takes a fall, this is what buoys your portfolio. This is what's always available for you should you need it. And then the other goal is to keep pace with inflation, right? If you're investing
Hmm.
and saving,
Hmm.
you don't want the economy to run faster than your savings,
Yeah, that's correct.
because then you'd be losing money while saving. That's a terrible situation to
Hmm.
be
Let's take a look
in.
at this
And
one more time. Go ahead.
yeah, for most Americans and their 401k plans, they're pretty limited with their options, right? 401ks only have about 20 to 30 core options to pick from. Some employers will have additional features like a self-directed brokerage account that opens you up to a wider array of things. Typically, it's a couple hundred mutual funds, ETFs, and sometimes individual stocks you get access to. But for folks that have left an old employer, cut from service, they're also able to roll over their 401k plan into an IRA. The benefit of doing that at an IRA just stands for individual retirement account.
Hmm.
The benefit of doing that is the IRAs have a lot more flexibility when it comes to retirement assets. One alternative that they get access to is a strategy called a power of the floor. We like to call it a bond alternative. I'm going to walk you through the graph here.
Hmm.
This is an illustration piece showing a general concept. On the bottom, you have the S&P 500 in red, this bond alternative in green, and then a fixed investment like a CD or a money market account in blue. And this is a cherry-picked timeline from 2012 back to 1997. Any guesses on why I picked this timeline?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a quick tech thing I have to take care. Hold on.
Oh, yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound and picture still clear?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. But when it comes to this bond alternative, I cherry-picked the timeline to showcase its power. Any idea on why I picked 1997 to 2012?
Let's see. Hold on. Actually, no, I don't. No, I'll be honest with you. No, I don't know why you picked that time.
This is just the time where we had 2 very big market corrections happen. The dot-com bubble back in the 1990s, and then the 2008 housing crash. Right. When the markets go down is when we want our conservative piece to truly shine and do its best job. That's why we picked this to demonstrate the strengths of this bond alternative.
Hmm.
Because the way that this works is instead of tying yourself to bonds and interest rates, instead you tie yourself to the market. Where market goes up, say 10%. You go up at a portion of that, say 6%. Meanwhile, your bonds or money market are doing 1 to 2%.
Mm. There's a steadiness. There's a
In
continuing steadiness.
theory, I can get to the actual practicalities of how those bond funds work in just a moment. But assuming you have a fixed, steady investment, it's returning very low, like 1%. Meanwhile, this is returning about 6%, while the market's doing about 10. And what I'm going to highlight is that when the market takes a tumble, say drops 20%, bonds might be losing
Mm-hmm.
alongside it 16%. What do you notice happens to the green line, the bond alternative?
Actually, it's kind of holding and it goes up just a little bit more. Yeah.
It stays flat. It
Yeah.
doesn't take a loss when the market takes
Yeah.
losses.
Yeah.
It protects you from market risk.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the market recovers afterwards, you recover alongside it at
Mm-hmm.
that same 6 for 10 rate. And the reason why I like this for a lot of my clients who have it available to them is while bonds have been doing about 1 to 2%, money market funds have been doing about 3 to 4%. This has been doing about 6 to 7% over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it quadruples the performance of
Mm-hmm.
bonds while taking away interest rate risk, which I'll dive into that in just a moment here
Okay.
with our remaining time.
Okay.
Yeah, when it's available, I often find that strategy like this helps fill that conservative part of the portfolio. So something that outpaces inflation
Mm-hmm.
at 3.5% and doesn't go down when the market goes down. It gets to stay flat when the markets go
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Right? It's an incredible tool. Again, it's not available to everyone, but when it is available, it's often a good tool to add to the
Yeah.
toolkit.
Yeah. I like
And
the power of the floor in bear markets. I love that. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
that's when you want the conservative part to shine. Bear
Mm-hmm.
markets, that's what they're there for.
Mm-hmm.
And any questions on this slide before I jump into more of the interest rate talk and how boring old bonds work?
No, let's continue.
Yeah, perfect. So, will be the last topic we discussed today, which is just how these bonds in the 401k plan actually work. Because too many people that I've talked to believe they're individual bonds that they're holding, when at the end of the day, that's not the case. And I'm going to take a step back because I know a lot of people in the audience are probably asking, what's a bond to begin with, right? All that a bond is let's say that, I don't know, Costco wants
Mm-hmm.
to open up 1,000 new stores all across America. That's going to cost a lot of money, a couple $1 billion. That's such a crazy amount of money
Yeah.
that no bank is willing to give out a loan of that amount.
Mm.
So what Costco does is it divides that loan into small parts, say $1,000 or $10,000 each. And that lets anyone in the market, from big banks to individual investors, buy a part of that loan. So you can give Costco, $1,000 and get back 5 or 6% or whatever the interest rate on that loan is. But an individual bond is just giving a loan to a company or a
Mm-hmm.
government or whatever entity.
I was thinking
And then
about when you were kids,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
uh, when your grandparents something would buy you a savings bond. You think, what is this for? Like, man.
yeah.
Okay. What?
That's exactly what they were doing. They were giving a
Mm-hmm.
loan to some entity like a bank
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
often the government, one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest takers of these loans.
Mm-hmm.
Then in return, the loan taker gives you back some money every time. And when the bond expires, they give you back your principal.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty safe to have an individual bond, right? As long as the person you're giving to is trustworthy and is going to stick around for however long the bond lasts.
Yeah.
right? If they go bankrupt, you're out of luck. But in 401k plans, they're not going out and buying individual bonds. Instead, the way that these work is these are bond mutual funds.
Mm-hmm. Just checking out.
A mutual fund is a collection of a bunch of different bonds, and the way that these work is they buy and sell on a fixed schedule.
Yeah.
Now that sounds fine, but the problem is there's this thing called interest rate risk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to explain it with the bond seesaw over here.
Here we go.
So, Patrice, let's say, how the market works, interest rate is about 4%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you for a loan of $1,000, and in return, each year, I'm going to give you 4% back, so $40 each year. And let's say that's the best deal you could find out there, and you take that deal. Then, next year, the economy changes, interest rates move. Now they're at 6%. Interest rates went up. Would you pay me $1,000 to get $60 or $1,000 to get $40?
I would say $1,000
Uh,
to get 60.
yeah, it's not a trick question.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
better deal available out there.
Yeah.
So what happens in return is that those old bonds, the ones that give 4%, have to be cheaper to be equivalent, right? You're not going to pay $1,000 for $40
Mm-hmm.
when you can get $60 for that same money.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you'd pay something like $800 or $700, right? The price of those bonds would drop. And what happens is that these are selling on a fixed schedule, so that when interest rates get hiked, they're selling the bonds at a loss
Mm-hmm.
and realizing losses in these portfolios, in these safe parts of the portfolio, so-called. And I'm going to highlight one specific year to make that really tangible.
Okay.
And it's a year that a lot of people remember, 2022. So this is after the economic easing of COVID, right? They're trying to tighten up the economy again, and we spike interest rates.
Mm.
What ends up happening is that short-term bonds that don't have a lot of space to move take on only slight losses, right? 5%, 10% for the 5-year bonds. Meanwhile, these long-term, with a reputation for being safe
Yeah.
positions,
Mm-hmm.
lose out on significant portions. 16% for the 10 years, 33% for the 30 years.
That's
Would you say something is safe if it's losing 33% of
absolutely
its
not.
value in 1 year?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Exactly, and a lot of people are under the impression that they're in safe individual bonds,
Mm-hmm.
when really they're in these bond mutual funds
Mhm.
that sell and buy on a fixed schedule
Mm-hmm.
without looking at the overall economy. And when it comes to solution, I don't want to doom and gloom, right? Most portfolios have something called a money market or a stable value fund that picks some of these shorter term bonds instead, right? More like 90 days, 120
Mm-hmm.
days.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that have it available, this power of the floor is often a very popular alternative as a bond alternative for a safe portion that can quadruple the performance of bonds while avoiding that market risk on the downside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know we talked a lot about bonds, but they're an important part of the portfolio because as someone grows older, the common recommendation is to help their dollars be more conservative, right? If someone is retiring in 2055, they have a lot of time ahead of them. Most of their money is going to be in equities. And then as you get closer and closer to retirement, these target date funds will place you more and more and more into these underperforming bonds. You can see if someone's retiring, right, in the next couple of years from the 2025 fund,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they're in about 50% bonds, which is meant to be safe. But as we see in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
took on 33% losses, and because it grows so slow, 1 to 2% each year, it takes a long time for it to recover from those losses.
Yeah. And depending where you are in age, you may never live to see that recovery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be your safe part that buoys you when everything else
Hmm.
loses. Instead, we see that it takes a big loss, the market takes a big loss. And the part that really terrifies me is that 83% of Americans never made a change in their investments in their 401k plan.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're just riding that boat from 1950s that has long sailed and was set for whatever the economy was doing back then. If you have any questions on what we talked about today, or dive into more details on the bonds or your specific situation, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. My contact information is on the screen. You can use that link. You can also reach me at my email, my phone number here, or just let Patrice know. I'm sure she'll be happy to connect us.
Absolutely. 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 Well, David, this was a little more intensive in terms of where we're going
Oh yeah,
with our conversation, but it's
we got more
definitely.
into the finance side of things, and
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
love this part of the job.
yeah. This is really, and it's also causing me to sit down and have a conversation with my husband about okay, where we are right now, and looking towards at some point retirement, and how are we really setting ourselves up. And I do want to ask this real quick question before you go.
Yeah.
Um, at what point would you recommend not, and I'm going to put this out there, not necessarily purchasing bonds, because if you're 55, do you really want to get
Mhm.
bonds?
Again, it's a personal choice according to risk
Mm-hmm.
tolerance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the tax status of your assets. It depends on what you're looking for out of your position.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've often found that something like this bond alternative will still perform better than individual bonds
Mm-hmm.
and is more diversified. Right? You get a menu of options to pick from usually, where it can be kind of across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
It's an individual bond. You got to do your research, make sure that that entity is not going to go bankrupt,
Mm-hmm.
while still giving you a good rate of return.
Yeah.
There's often a hard balancing act to do. So it depends on how much work you want to put in, depends on what kind of results you want. Often we find that when this is available, this is a great choice. We recommend it to a lot of our clients. But for people that have individual bonds, I often like to say just hold on to them.
Yeah.
Bonds are right. Bonds exist for a reason. They fill an important role.
And that you can pass them on.
Exactly. As long as they don't expire. If they expire, you just get the money.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I'll go ahead and expand the screen. And for those
Yeah.
of you who will be watching the replay, here is David Awakim's information. Please feel free to go ahead and scan that QR code and schedule a consultation with him. And he is such a darling and will be able to sit down with you and really give you a step-by-step plan and a strategy based off of where you want to be financially. So, David, as usual, thank you so much for being here. And for everyone, David will be with us. We have already gotten the schedule locked in. August the 19th, we will be here again for part 4 of our financial healthcare planning series. So, as we are preparing for that next segment in the series, please make sure refresh. There's a lot of information that has been given over these 3 parts that you may not be able to digest everything. Take your time. That's why they're there for you, to use it, to share it with your friends, families, your coworkers. Hey, even share it with someone you think is helping you with your financial plan, and say, hey, I was watching this seminar with David Awakim, and I'm not thinking you're telling me the right information. But please take the time to go back and watch it over and over again until you get the information deep down. And like I said, don't gatekeep the information. We are here providing it for you absolutely free. We are providing a service from the Indigo Inspire Foundation to make sure that you are in a position to be on a healthy financial plan. So I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to say, David, thank you once again for being here. I'm so glad that you are here, and we are partnering to do this And please make sure you follow us here at Indigo Inspire Live. We have a few announcements that we're going to make, reminding you July 25th in Philadelphia. The Summer Fest Philly will be taking place, the fundraising music festival for Autism Speaks. You know, we are a proud supporter of Autism Speaks, and we are so excited. And we've got some amazing artists coming up, and I want to share this information with you real quickly. So as you go to the screen, listen, this is what we're doing here. We want to make sure that you are in a great place in the city of Philadelphia. You know, all roads are leading to Philadelphia. We've got the World Cup going on here, where the 250th anniversary of our nation is happening in the Philly area. You know, because Independence Mall is right downtown, and we've now got the Summer Fest Philly happening July 25th at 4 p.m. San Franklin, Sincere, Mark Collier, Renwick Dewsbury, Michelle Benia, Dia Love, and more, hosted by Desi. I know David remembers Desi. She did an amazing interview with him in Washington, D.C., and she
She's
will be,
wonderful.
yes, she is amazing, and she will be hosting the music festival. So we're excited. We want to give a big shout out to our partners in this venture, Ecclesia Culture. We want to thank Merge Music Group, Supreme Gospel Entertainment, and we also would like to thank a ministry partner, the Living Manor Church, who really want to make sure that they let the community know that it's so important for faith-based communities to enter into the conversation of how we can serve the autism community. So all roads are leading here, July 25th, 4 p.m., the Summer Fest Philly. I'm telling you, better follow us on Instagram. We've got a lot of things happening, and we are so excited about that. So in the meantime, once again, Dave, thank you so much for being here.
Hmm.
And I want to put that QR code one more time on here on the screen, so people once
Yeah.
again will
Please
know
always love
how.
answering the questions people have. They're always either they make a big difference or they get my brain going. I
Yes,
always love
very
the
much.
challenge. I always love seeing what the situation is like and helping tomorrow be better than yesterday.
Absolutely. And for those of you who will watch the replay, please put your questions in the comments. As those questions get put in the comments, I will pass them on to David, and he can go right there and be able to answer the questions as they're coming in. So, once again, David, thank you so much for being here. We hope you have a great rest of your few weeks. You're traveling, I'm traveling, things are
Oh
happening,
yeah.
and we will be together on August the 19th. So, everyone, have a great night. And as always, it's not just a vibe here. You know that. But it is a whole mood. All right, everybody, have a great night. All right, David, thank you.
Take care. Thank you again for having
Bye,
me. Always
everybody.
appreciate it.
Bye. Oh.